and welcome to What Goes Around. My name is Eamon Murtagh.
And my name's Deb Grant.
And on this week's show, I'm lucky enough to talk to Richard Norris, who is not only a fantastic musician, but actually a really good writer too. His new book, Strange Things Are Happening, tells his story from a sort of quite quiet lad living in the semi-countryside to a sort of global pop superstar who is hanging out with Mick Jones from The Clash and making the UK's first acid house record despite not knowing what acid house is, and then having a string of top 10 hits around the world. It's quite a ride. So we got Richard Norris on the show.
Eamon Murtagh, it's been a while. I'd love to know what goes around.
I have been trying to improve myself.
Oh, good for you.
Exactly. Someone
interesting coincidence with midlife. Just a coincidence? Who knows?
I'm pleased I'm still clinging on to midlife.
Nobody knows how old you are. It's very enigmatic.
That's true.
Topic.
Not even me. I'm not sure anyway. I know you're the kind of person that, you believe in a little bit of manifestation in the mind and a little bit of life planning. Am I right?
Oh yes, my whole life, my whole fortune to manifestation. No. Certainly not talent.
Determination. I was going to say.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Tenacity.
So, last time we spoke, I think we were both in a bit of a miserable place. We were both feeling a bit like, oh God, life is hard and we've moved, it's all difficult.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd take a leaf out of your book and I went to see a life coach.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, kind of proactive. I mean, I went to, a friend of mine knew a life coach who had to do some extra sittings to get her life coach license.
I love that. She's practicing on you.
Exactly. So I got a freebie.
Nice.
But yeah, it was quite a strange and interesting thing to do, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a good friend who's a life coach and I've had a couple of sessions with her. And actually, I mean, you joke about manifesting, but she's amazing. But I said specific things to her. She asked me, you probably had I'm sure you'll talk about a similar experience, but she asked me very specifically what success would look like, and I named some very specific things, and within a year or so I was doing those very, very, very specific things. It was strange.
There you go.
Yeah.
You see, it is kind of, so my experience was, first of all, I am a deeply sceptical person.
I know this.
So I wasn't really thinking, oh, this will sort me out, but I was thinking, hey, it's free, might as well give it a go.
Yeah.
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, do you?
Well, exactly.
And like I said, I was quite miserable. I felt like I had a lovely sort of kingdom of music where I was, like I've done here. It's been very difficult to get involved in the scene, blah, blah, blah. And it was getting to the stage I was thinking, I'm just going to have to fucking do something else because I'm fucked. Yeah. But I thought I'll talk to this life coach lady. And, it was interesting. Like, it's not like she sat there like Maharishi guru person and sort of went, yeah, do this and everything will be fine. But the actual voicing of what was actually in your mind to someone that... isn't going to say, well, you should just go, why don't you ever tidy your room? Or can't you just well, you haven't got time for that bother anymore. Come on, someone who's like just going to sit there and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so I did my little thing and I sort of told her what I want. And she didn't really say anything that totally rocked my world and made me think, good God. But just by talking out loud, I kind of realised that it's not like I'm lost in life. I know what I want to do. But I think I'd lost the ability to G myself up to do some of it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think, obviously, we both come from Irish backgrounds. And, I have the double whammy of coming from a Jewish background as well. And I feel like the overarching sort of...
But you've struggled in life.
You should meet my mum. Seriously. I feel like if there's a sort of overarching narrative there where it's just like, not for the likes of us. Or the idea that there's some kind of karmic force in the world where if you strive for too much, God is going to be like, oh, no. Yeah.
Strike you down. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's what's refreshing about going to a life coach is they're like, no, you can pursue happiness if you want to, if that's what you want. Yeah. God's not going to get angry with you. I mean, maybe he will, but he probably can't do anything about it. So yeah, it's a revelation.
Yeah, and it was just genuinely, after I'd actually said the things out loud, I almost did the session myself, if you know what I mean. I mean, this is probably denigrating my work, but you know, it was like, as soon as I found myself talking, I could hear myself saying, but you know how to do that. Mm-hmm. You know why aren't you doing that? Mm-hmm. You know, and also I suddenly felt less desperate about it all. Mm. And I'll tell you what as well, actually, is I probably got even better advice from DJ Paulette.
Oh, yes, she's very wise.
Well, she saw that I was like having this moment and going to the life coach and all that sort of stuff. Mm. And bless her socks, we did get on well, but she just DM'd me straight away and said, "You all right? Everything okay? You know, do you want to talk about anything?" Oh, man, it was just... And I thought,
what a ledge.
What a ledge. And also just like, I mean... You know, she must do hundreds of interviews anyway, so I'm surprised she even remembered who I was. But yeah, we just and had a really nice chat, and she really was positive about stuff. And I felt like, you know, there's someone who's really done it all, who's actually saying, "Come on, you can do it, you can do it." You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, that's great. That's what you need. Nice. Support from your community. Yeah, and just like not like a judgy. Kind of, well, you have to do this. One of the best things she said actually was, because I said, yeah, you know, quite a way into the conversation, she said, okay, so I kind of know what I need to do. I need to start doing this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, do you know what? If you mess it up and you don't do it and you find yourself, you haven't done it all week or all month or whatever, don't give yourself a hard time. Yeah. Because you know, you will run out of steam and you will get distracted and things will happen in life. Just, you know, wipe slate clean, start again. Keep going. Yeah. And that I just found incredibly liberating. Yes, because I feel like when you are in a position where you sort of make commitments to things, but then it doesn't happen for one reason or another, it's very easy to fall into the trap of being like, well, that confirms that I'm useless. No point trying again. It's official.
And I think what I was doing quite a lot was I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to regain what I had and left behind. And of course, it's never going to happen. It's I'm in a different pond. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There aren't the same frogs around. There aren't the same lily pads. It's all different. So I need to find another way of being. Do you know what I mean? And that took a lot of pressure off me. And I think what I was doing before was I was looking a little bit desperate.
And that can be very subtle. What you give off when you're a little bit desperate.
It's the vibes you give out. That's the thing. And even when I think, oh no, I handled myself well there and all that sort of stuff, it's like you do give something off of yourself when you want it a little too much, don't you?
Yes, definitely. You know what I mean? And even if it's not on a conscious level for you or the person receiving your desperation, it is sort of this unspoken communication and impression that you've left, which doesn't do you any favours. And you're better than that. You have no reason to be desperate.
Yes, I believe myself.
You got fucking DJ Paulette reaching out to you on, on Twitter, like, you know.
Oh, what a kind lady! I love her so
she's
much.
Amazing. But she did particularly love her interview with you on this podcast, I think, didn't she?
We honestly, at the end of it, I was just saying, I'd really love to just sit down for the rest of the night and like have a meal and a chat, because it was one of those things where you just find someone who's like. She is so into her music, but she's also like a very open person, and extraordinarily easy to talk to. Do you know what I mean? Even before the interview started, we must have talked for half an hour. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that kind of never happens. You know, a lot of people are just like, right, get on with it. I've got to be here at 12 or whatever.
Or they spend an hour fussing around trying to plug stuff in and get the sound working. We'll mention no names.
Yeah. But yeah, it was all really nice, and I kind of just relaxed a little bit. And you know what? It worked. Just all of a sudden, I started getting offered things. And it's like, I don't know if it's a universe thing, but it's not like I was talking to all these people. I had talked to them all, I guess, at some stage. But it just all started coming to me. And it reminded me of that thing years ago. There was a piece of paper that this musician had written loads of notes when he was asked to join Thelonious Monk's quartet or quintet. And he was like a stand-in for one of the players who was ill. And so at the rehearsal, he thought he'd make loads of notes. So it's out there somewhere. You search it on Google, you'll find it. But there was a little bit in the corner where he said, on getting gigs. And Thelonious Monk says, never ask for a gig, just be on the scene and be ready to play. And I suddenly remembered that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And thanks, universe. It's been good the last couple of months.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. But it is a very subtle kind of thing, because it's just about letting people know that you already believe that you deserved a gig. Rather than really wanting it. Well, you can be a cocky bastard if you want. Many DJs are.
That's true, actually.
But I'm very glad to hear that. That warms my heart.
Well, again, because I remember talking to you a while back about, you were saying like you do try and think and manifest and and believe that it's going to happen.
Delusions of grandeur, I think, is the phrase you're reaching for.
Possibly is. But you know what? If you don't have delusions of grandeur, you'll have delusions of squalor.
Oh my God! Eamon Burton, 2024. Yes, it's so true. Delusions of squalor. God, that's my autobiography title. Sorted.
There you go. You can have that one for free.
Oh, I love that.
What we're gonna do right here is go back.
Way back into time.
That's right.
Name that tune. Name that tune.
Richard Norris is a man who believes in music, in its endless possibilities, in its catalytic effect on both the listeners and its creators. In his new book, Strange Things Are Happening, he reveals how his musical journey began in the silence of the countryside, where he'd listened for moles underground and birdsong that filled the air, and how this attention to audio would snowball throughout his life as he adopted the DIY ethic of punk, made fanzines, formed bands, dug out psychedelic nuggets, and found himself collaborating with an incredible list of artists and musicians. He co-wrote and produced the seminal dance album Jack the Tab, often cited as the UK's first acid house record, despite never actually having heard acid house at the time. That started an affiliation with dance music that spawned worldwide success as one half of The Grid, and critical acclaim for his role in the psychedelic dance act Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve. As a producer and remixer, he's worked with an amazing list of artists, including Joe Strummer, Sky Saxon, Genesis P-Orridge, David Ball and Erol Alkan, and Robert Fripp. It's been an incredible life lived through music, and we're very, very delighted to welcome Richard Norris to the podcast. Hello, Richard.
Thank you very much. That was I am blushing this end.
That's good. That's good. Oh, well deserved. Well deserved. Yeah. I mean, you packed it in. I finished the book last night, and it's got a lovely pace to it all. It starts off with you as a small child running around in the woods, and you paint a really nice picture of the sort of quiet and the digging around in nature and just exploring things as a very young kid. And then the snowball begins to build and it rolls. By about 200 pages in, everything is crazy in your life. I mean, what a ride you've had.
Yeah, it definitely didn't stop. There wasn't much kind of time to catch your breath. That's certainly from the sort of early days of kind of acid house onwards. Really, that was that's where it kind of really started to catch fire. But yeah, it's been a non-stop, as you say, mainly audio, non-stop kind of sonic story, really, which is what I was kind of wanting to bring out. Just a life in music, really.
Definitely comes across, and I think it's one of those things where you've always seemed to be just like some artists have these periods where they kind of have these long fallow periods, or where they kind of walk away or whatever. But even when you seem to be having a break, you seem to end up making loads of music. And even like, you know, towards the end of the book where you're talking about lockdown and all that sort of stuff, you're making all these beautiful music for healing projects, which just, you know, sound absolutely delightful. You've never really lost your love for the whole making music thing, have you?
Yeah, I think it's two things. Yeah, one is it's I come from a point of view of a kind of a fan, really. I'm a big fan of music. I mean, I listen to tons of music. And, you know, I've always collected music, and so I kind of very much come from a fan point as well as from a musician point. But I think also just being an independent artist, it's something about that which means you do kind of, if you did stop, you wouldn't eat. So it's kind of there is that. There's a kind of so it's a bit of both, really. I mean, a bit of it is a kind of is passion, and a bit of it is practical, really. I mean, I've always got like 4 or 5 projects on the go continually, and I've had that for probably 40 years. I mean, it's you know, there's always something going on, because they don't all work. You know, some of them work really well, some of them don't. You know, some of them are kind of one-off thing, and some of them have lasted since 1988. So it really depends really on what's going. But I'm certainly I've certainly got something to do every day. That must be said.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting reading the book how you've always kind of been a self-starter. You know, you've had that DIY ethic. You were still a teenager when you were running around trying to get your first record out. You know, so you've never left it for other people to sort out your destiny, have you?
I think that was probably initially out of necessity, and then sort of further along, it just seemed to be quicker. Really, that was the main thing. I mean, you can kind of wait for a record label and stuff like that, but I mean, the whole ethos of do it yourself, get up and do it. You know, coming from that sort of that old fanzine thing of you know, here's a chord, here's another, now go and form a band. I mean, that was very much the idea, and you know, I wasn't, you know, I was like 14 or 15 when I made my first record, and I wasn't by any degree a great musician or a great sort of soloist or anything like that, but it was just, you know, we were just kind of drawn along by the momentum of that time. I mean, certainly from sort of punk and post-punk, it was such an exciting time. There's so much great music going on, and you could hear it, you know, and everyone was listening to it on John Peel. So, you know, from 10 till midnight every night, from Monday till Thursday, we were getting, you know, this incredible musical education. I mean, that's like a whole extra day of schoolwork, basically. You know, doing that. You know, everyone's got the same story about, you know, listening to John Peel and discovering all this like really a wide variety of music, and you know, different genres coming one after the other. So you hear a reggae record, and then an old blues record, and then a punk record. It was just an incredible thing, and even the records that you didn't like, or, you know, like I found listening to reggae initially quite challenging, because it was quite a different, you know, dub was quite a different thing to me, but I stuck with it, and it's my favourite thing in the world now. So I mean, it has been for years. But so it's like, I love that. It wasn't like, you know, just playing to a playlist. It was like, you know, listen to this one, you might not like it this time, but I'll play it again in a couple of days, and you'll probably get into it then. And that kind of ethos of radio was incredible, and I was very lucky. Me and my dad went up to see John Peel, just on the off chance. We thought, well, let's go to the BBC and see if he'll talk to us. And he kind of came down, talked to my dad, who was doing like kind of cracking dad jokes, as dads do, which I do now. And,
so you loved that as a young man.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh, Dad, and there's John Peel. It's like, you know, the kind of coolest DJ and everything. It's like, but they got on well, and that was fine. And he played the record the next night, and I was probably 14 or 15, and it was just like, at that point I was just like, well, this is what I want to do. You know, it's kind of, you know, a lot of people, you know, I've got a teenage daughter now, and it's you know, she isn't quite sure what she's going to do. She's got loads of things she likes, but I was set. You know, I was just one of those people who was like, right, I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to live music. I'm going to write about music, and I'm going to play music. And it was always, it was really lucky, I think, to kind of have that focus at a very early age.
You can see the enthusiasm for all aspects of music as well in your story, because, like, you know, you managed to get in contact with someone who can help you make a record, and that leads you on then to looking for lost psychedelic tracks to reissue. And I think when I read the whole story, It feels to me like psychedelia is like your baseline of everything, really. It feels like all of the aspects of all the different musics you've made, they kind of come off this sort of searching for a bit of wonderment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it certainly is psychedelia. It's also very much just sort of studio-based things. I kind of love sound, and I love like creating a kind of sonic landscape, really, and just sort of placing things in it. And that could be anything from dub to ambient to electronic to even, I made a psych folk album recently, and I loved kind of creating the space for that. And so I think a lot of it is, it comes from psychedelia, just the sort of the feeling you get where it's a bit kind of bit woozy or a bit kind of spacious or a bit just a bit different, but it's definitely to do with kind of sound placement and effect, so that if it's psychedelia, there would be phasing and flanging and echo, but then in terms of going through towards dance music, it was kind of I was really kind of searching for a very kind of modern psychedelia, really, but through dance music. So using electronics and using the plethora of new sounds and new kind of instruments that you could use, but in a way kind of doing the same thing. And I think it's kind of come full circle with that lately by making a load of dub records, which is where the effects are just so vital to the tune. So it's almost that the effects almost are the tunes in a way. So I think it's weird because it looks like I've worked with a real diverse kind of group of people, but actually you're right. I think there's a thread that does run through it.
I think psychedelia, I've kind of had a similar experience to you, I'm about 5-6 years younger, but I think had a similar vibe in that it was all kind of John Peel and stuff. But I got a job in a record shop, and there was just a couple of old hippies, Jerry O'Neill, God bless him. They used to come in, and they realised that I liked noise pop and Sonic Youth and things like that.
Right.
And so there was like a bit of a psychedelic tinge to it. But they started schooling me on what was going on in the 60s and bring me all these different. This one is far out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you had that same thing where you had someone who could show you these little classics, and the Bam Caruso label then became quite a long part of your musical education.
Yeah, very much so. That was Phil Smee, who he ran the Bam Caruso label with this guy called Cali, and but also was an amazing designer. He still does have a company called Waldo's Design, and he lived in St Albans where I was growing up, and he was just he would continually have he'd be doing an Elvis Costello sleeve or a Motorhead bit of the Motorhead logo, or he'd be doing some kind of amazing old blues reissue thing for Ace or for Edsel or something, and he just had this sort of continual turnover of amazing records that he was working on, and lots of amazing people coming down from London to see him. And I started working with him kind of in the school holidays initially, just being the kind of tea boy and going out and doing the posts. But it was an incredible education, really. And I think generally that idea, I mean, there was throughout my career in music, or my work in music, there's always been this kind of level of community and of other people kind of holding you up in a way. I mean, it would certainly, when we were like young punks, there was always some slightly older hippie bloke that helped us, book a venue, or they wrote something about us in the local paper or something like that. And so Phil was definitely one of those. Also, I mean, as you say, record shop dudes. The two Bills, Bill Forsyth and Bill Allerton, who ran the shop in Ladbroke Grove, were just this incredible source of information where you kind of couldn't go into the shop for 10 minutes. You'd have to go there for like all afternoon, and they'd say, listen to this. And I mean, I know a few people had the same schooling with them. I know Ed from the Chemical Brothers used to live around the corner from them, and he used to go in quite a lot, and they wrote, right, what about this, and it was just this deep knowledge. It's incredible knowledge, and I really hope that continues. And I'm sure independent record shops are pretty healthy at the moment. I'm sure that there's people doing that, and I'd hope that this stuff doesn't disappear when these guys leave this astral plane. There's a lot. I learned so much about particularly about 60s records from Phil and Cali and from these guys in these record shops, and it was an honour really, just to that they were kind of passing the mantle on in a way.
Well, they're so important, those people that bring new music into your life. And they really do, especially when you're young. They open your eyes to things that you literally couldn't possibly, especially back then when there was no internet and all that sort of stuff. It really was, you needed someone who had the knowledge in order to open up for you, because it wasn't going to show up in a paper. It was rarely going to appear on the radio, and certainly you couldn't just research it easily at home.
And also, those places were quite scary. I mean, going to Rough Trade as a teenager, that was like really scary. Or Probe in Liverpool, I kind of missed Pete Burns from Dead or Alive being in there.
Yeah, because he was really famous for being the most intimidating record shop person ever.
Indeed, but there's, I mean, even so, there was still levels of you would get slightly, there would be an eyebrow or two raised if you brought the wrong thing. I mean, even got that in, I spent about 30 years in just in and around Ladbroke Grove and Portobello Road, and even going to see Nigel in Rough Trade there, he'd be like, he'd always say, if you don't like it, you can bring it back. And one time I brought it back and he was absolutely offended. It's really funny. He's like, what do you mean you don't like this Richard Hawley album? Which I now like, obviously. But
yeah, sometimes it takes a couple of listens, like you say. Sometimes you've got to just break through the barrier.
Yeah, but I think that thing. I mean, it's kind of I think a lot of the things that I've done have been very much with a backdrop of being pretty shy and having to kind of force myself to do it. I'm kind of less shy now, but it's still there. I'm still kind of like, still feel like that 15-year-old kid going to see John Peel half the time. So, but yeah, just kind of like, it was just so exciting, and the idea of music and everything that went with it was so exciting. I couldn't let the shyness kind of control me. I had to just get through it and just fumble my way around into this thing just by going and talking to people, really. And enthusiasm.
Well, I guess that's one of the things about learning about these things, is like suddenly you get a foothold of expertise which you maybe didn't have, and that can really open doors for you when you're talking to the wider world of music. If you can actually say, oh yeah, but have you heard CA Quintet, or have you heard of Sky Saxon? Do you know what I mean? And then suddenly, I mean, everyone loves. The reason we have this podcast is because everyone who loves music loves to talk about music.
Yeah,
and it can take the shyest people out of their little self-imposed prison and really give them a platform to talk about something.
Yeah, I guess it's probably in the same way, that half the population talks about football. I mean, there's or just people from these parts talk about the weather. There is some kind of connection that can be forged very early on, and I'm definitely, I was kind of in the book, I was really wanting to highlight the idea of community and the do-it-yourself thing where you do need these people, and you need all the people. You need the person on the door, and you need the promoter, and you need the writer, and you need the guy doing the t-shirts, and which for me all of that really came together in the kind of post-punk DIY period, but particularly in the acid house period, because we were going out. Me and my mates were going out probably, it was 6 nights a week, I think, and then someone opened another night on the 7th night. So we were going out all the time, and people just lost their jobs, completely, but then suddenly found new jobs because they could do all these other things that were connected to music or promotion or t-shirts or records or labels or design or all this stuff that kind of opened up. And I think that kind of flexibility and that sort of taking a big leap has been a kind of thing that I do every few years. I think it's sort of just to keep things interesting, but mainly because it's kind of worked when I've done it. And I'd always say to anyone, if you've got an absolute passion for something and you really want to do it, you just have to go for it. Really.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was reading the book, one of the things I wrote down, I mean, little set of notes here, is just how important collaboration seems to be to you all the way through. It's not just like, I mean, sometimes when you get people who are in music, they want to make their art, and do what they do, and quite often that is a very individualistic, mission to be on. But it feels like. First of all, that you actively enjoy the sharing of the ideas and the mix of people that you need around to make a project happen, and also that you don't seem to have the same level of ego as many artists do. That you're quite happy not just to work with people, but to really share that limelight and to share the tasks that need to be done. It comes across as you're very much a team player.
Well, I think it's also just. I mean, I kind of get still to this day I get a buzz or a thrill like introducing people to other people. Not particularly, specifically for one of my projects, but like, yeah, you should meet this person. I know you're going to get on. And some of those connections have lasted for decades, and it's just something I don't know. It's just something I really like about that. But musical collaboration is. It's weird because I've been, for the last few years, I've pretty much been working. I mean, I work every day in the studio, and but it's mainly on my own. So I've got like quite a monk-like existence.
It's quite a change though, because it seems like for many years, I say, you were always surrounded by people. In the early days, you had your band, and then you were working with the reissue label, and then making your fanzines, which obviously brings you out. You have to have other people to help you do that. And then writing, and your connections and the way you kind of foster those connections just seem to be really important. It feels like where you are now is like it's almost like you've reached a level of comfort with yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Certainly. I mean, and I think a lot of that happens with having my own studio, which I've kind of never really had. Well, I've had studio kind of rooms before, but I've now got a kind of purpose-built place. So there's been quite a few people saying, how come your music in the last couple of years has been like really productive and sounds better? And it's like, it's because I've got my own studio now, so I can kind of do it. And if you picture this place, it is some kind of a bit of a boys' toys thing. I've got a drum kit and a bunch of synths and some nice art, and it's a nice spring day. So yeah, it is. I do love it. I mean, I really wish I had more people to come and see me, singers or different musicians. But because every time they do, the vibe and the energy is just like, I can get things done so quickly because there's something about having just one person in the room, even if they're not even doing anything. It just hit you just instantly. Having done this for so long, I mean, you instantly just hear it through their ears, and you can pick up on things that you just wouldn't get, which is a kind of weird phenomena. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's a real thing, and you can instantly kind of make decisions a lot quicker. So I do yeah. So anyone who wants to collaborate in my room, I'm particularly. You
have a big list of people now, right?
I'm really looking for something very specific at the moment. I'm looking for a very sort of jazzy, soulful singer for a kind of disco funk boogie project, and I can't find one. I'm sure there's hundreds of them out there, and I've been going through it all. So find, make it a campaign if you can find one, particularly if they live near kind of Brighton. That would be really handy. But I'm on the hunt now, but it takes a lot of time. Singers, I find that very. I can find dozens of any other instrumental person, but singers, I don't know, I can't quite find it.
I guess it's a very personal thing, isn't it? It literally comes from them, so totally. You've got to have all the stars aligned to get that.
Well, I'm going to be sort of I haven't really got many nights off lately because I'm doing my book tour type thing, but I will be out at open mic sessions in Brighton and surrounding areas, so if you see me and you're a good singer, please get in touch.
You heard it here first on What Goes Around. That's what we like to do, hooking people up all through the nation. Well, let's just skip back for a moment to the psychedelia, because we've asked you to pull out a few tunes today and talk about your phonographic memories with us. And you've pulled out one of my favourite records of all time, Arthur Lee in Love, Alone Again Or. Tell us about why this particular record speaks to you and how you came across it.
It's just an incredible production. I mean, it's amazing kind of string arrangements, and just a beautiful kind of late 60s LA feel to it. But there's just so much going on. I mean, the kind of there's this kind of absolute beauty, but also quite a darkness within the band. There's I mentioned in the book that in early days of psychedelia and sort of kind of swapping information amongst us kind of psych fans, there was all this rumour, and there's one rumour that where the singer Arthur Lee was meant to have gone to jail for stealing sausages and stuff. So it was just these like weird things. I mean, I know he did go to jail for many other things, but yeah, the idea of a band called Love, it didn't really sound quite right because they were pretty heavy bunch, I think. And but just this record, it's just been a constant joy for many years. It's just been, you know, it's just one of those tunes that is never going to go away.
Yeah, said it's alright. I won't forget all the times I've waited patiently for you, and you'll do just what you choose to do, and I will be alone again tonight, my dear.
You did actually get to meet him in the end, didn't you?
I did. I met him a few times actually. I met him with Sky Saxon, and for the first time, and then there was talk of me producing him at one point, and which apparently a lot of other people were quite scared of doing. But I was like, no, I'll do it. That would be fantastic. But it didn't happen, and it was a shame because there was some of the different tracks that I'm not sure that came out. There's a track by Sons of Adam called Feathered Fish, which is like an early Sight one, but it was one that Arthur wrote, and he'd done a new version of that, and it was great. It was really good, and I don't know what happened, but it never kind of came to be. But that would have been a real honour. But and a lot of people were saying, beware, that's going to be hard work. But,
well, I mean, he had a difficult time, didn't he? Because he was in jail for a long time. He wasn't away for a year. You know, he was in jail for a long time. And I remember when he came back and did the concerts at the Albert Hall and did a little tour. We went to see him, and you know, they played all the old stuff and it was fantastic. And I remember he did try a new song. Right. This is in the Wedgwood Rooms in Portsmouth. Right. And I'm not sure what happened, but it all fell apart. Like they got about a minute in and then it all fell apart. And he looked so crestfallen and so upset. It was honestly one of the most difficult things I've ever had to watch on stage. I've had tears in my eyes because I felt I could feel the pressure coming off him of him wanting to come back and do more, but he's kind of weighed down by his past and by this horrendous gap that had happened that stopped him doing what he loved for so long.
But I mean, it was interesting hearing him though, because I mean, his voice was just such a strong thing. It was almost. He was doing those kind of really drawn out notes. It was almost operatic. I mean, it was incredible because he must have been in his 60s or onwards probably. So yeah, the power was there. Yeah, I mean it's always a difficult thing though, isn't it? If you are going to be, if you have massive success or massive cult success with certain tracks, they are going to be with you forever, kind of thing. It's quite hard to make a new one to put on there.
And that album is. It's always in the top 100 best albums ever, whatever the publication is, that always pops up somewhere. I can remember on the way home, me and my friend got in the cab afterwards and we were talking about like that moment and thinking about the troubles he'd had basically. And when we were home, the taxi driver started joining in the conversation. He said, I was in there too. And I was like, oh, were you? No, I just finished, came out and put the taxi on, you're the first people I picked up. And we had this massive long chat about Otherly Love, and in the end he just said, right, it's on me, lads. So we didn't have to pay the taxi fare.
There you go. It's the power of music strikes again.
Power of love, mate. Power of love.
Excellent.
But again, you've worked together with so many people, and you've managed to work with some real psychedelic legends like Sky Saxon from the Seeds. I mean, that must have been amazing for you, having had such a deep love for psychedelia, to then find yourself moving in circles where one of your greatest heroes introduces you to another.
I mean, it almost incomprehensible. I mean, but it's happened quite a lot. I remember, being at Liverpool University doing my thesis on William Burroughs and then meeting him like 6 months later. I mean, it was kind of, there's lots of just weird things happen, that people like that, or Timothy Leary, we made a record with Timothy Leary, and certainly Sky was just an incredible character. He was just sort of very much a spontaneous person in the now, kind of not mainly because he needed to be, because he was pretty much a kind of beatnik vagrant for most of the rest of the later days of his life, and but he would just be on the spot. You know, we'd record a track, and he'd have one set of lyrics, and then you record it again, it'd be a completely other set of lyrics. So it was a bit kind of Lee Scratch Perry in a way, but it was, we had good fun. That takes up quite a big chapter of the book. It was the first chapter I wrote, actually. It was the one about Sky, because I just wanted to kind of almost reinstate him as someone that, you know, was you know, he had very little kind of sort of what most people would view as success in terms of big hits or you know, kind of longevity as a career. You know, there was lots of things that happened. You know, he joined a cult for many years and all kinds of things. But to me, he was successful because he just kept going. You know, just like anywhere he was, he'd be like, "Hey man, do you want to make a record?" You know, with whoever he was with, if they were musicians or not. And it was just that kind of idea. You know, I don't know many, you know, apart from Damo Suzuki, I don't know many people that do that. You know, and it was great. You know, he was playing. You know, the weekend before he died, he was playing at Austin Psych Fest. You know, and it's like, you know, in his much later years, and it's just like, well, you know, that to me, that's success, because it's, you know, it's not chart success or commercial success, but it is one form of success, I think, to just keep going, basically. Yeah,
and I can hear the love in your voice when you talk about these people, you know, and there's a lovely part in the book where you sort of meet him and tell him about reissuing these records, and he said, "I didn't get paid for that," and you literally write him a check. I love that. I think that's just so sweet.
I mean, there was quite a large quantity of red wine involved in that decision.
But even so, you know, you did get the checkbook out. But the point is that you did that out of love, a love for what he'd given you through the music. You know, it wasn't like a business. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to think about it, really.
No, it was just. I mean, it was kind of, you know, he just had that thing where he's just like, "I never got paid, man." You know, and it was just a bit of a funny thing. It wasn't, you know, we licensed the record fairly and squarely, and it's just a shame that he didn't get the money. But he probably like sold his rights in the 70s.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Did something. I mean, he went for his very first check he got from a label. He just took all the money and just gave it away to homeless people on the streets of LA. So I mean, it's like he had a very weird mixture of total hippie and then also hustler as well. So it was kind of both, really. It was kind of, you know, different sides.
Well, that kind of leads us on a little bit to the next section, which deals more with electronic music. Right. And your next track is Mr. Fingers, Can You Feel It? And I think, well, anyone who's been raving or into acid house or any of that, this track is an instant, you know, it gives you the goosebumps, it gives you the rush, brings back the memories, and makes you feel wonderful. But that whole period of early acid house, you were right square centre in that. And again, you bumped into a strange old hippie who flipped the script in Genesis PRH from Psychic TV and Throbbing Gristle.
Yeah. Who was an interesting bunch of people, basically. You know, there's a real, you find out in the book, there's a very, you know, there's a big kind of up and down sides of working with Jen, and that, you know, we made this psychedelic dance record that, you know, we heard the words acid house and thought, well, that sounds like psychedelic dance music, and right, let's go and make a record next weekend. And so we did, you know, before we'd even heard any acid house music at all.
Wasn't that you just went to interview him, and then through the course of conversation you ended up making a record with him? That is incredible. Yeah.
Well, I think he was a big fan of the sort of psychedelia and Bam Crusoe, but he was also extremely wily. He was a bit of a trickster, really, and I think he kind of knew that I had a label and I had distribution, and I could probably front the money and we could do this. And I think that's part of his brain was ticking on that level, as well as the level of you know, a real exploratory thing, and the time was just right. You know, we kind of felt it was right, but it was totally him that was going, right, let's go and make it next weekend, which was amazing. Really. Totally. And but he had this kind of, so there was some, you know, we had incredible highs. I mean, making that Jack the Tab record, we were all kind of, it's the only electronic record I've made where we were kind of jamming. There was like 3 or 4 people all playing at once, and I don't know who else. The only people I've heard that kind of do that is like Public Enemy, really, where they would jam a bit and then cut a section of that, and the kind of layers of noise, and it doesn't, it doesn't really, electronic records don't really get made like that, and so that was a real amazing introduction to how to make a very quick electronic record.
Yeah, well, I did my copy out yesterday while I was reading it, and because I thought, I've got to hear this again, because it's been 20 odd years since I last played it, and I mean, it's an incredible bit of work. It's funny how I remember I got it because there was this legend that it was the first acid house record, and it's so funny because I remember getting it and thinking, it's not a great deal of, I mean, it's trippy, but it's not a great deal of acid house going on in here.
I mean,
it was very, very trippy. You know, and it has this quality about it that is definitely psychedelic and definitely very dance, and it was very unusual for the time. And I suppose without that session, you wouldn't have hooked up with David Ball either.
That's true. I mean, we kind of made a record, a track within that session, and which was one of the more kind of straightforward, kind of high energy electronic bass tracks, and. But yeah, I think Jen had this rule where you had to we could only spend an hour on each track, which included writing it and mixing it, which was a great thing, because because basically then your first ideas get on tape, which was really rare. You normally kind of refine it and stuff, and there's something about that. I mean, the record. I mean, as I say, you've listened to it recently. I mean, it still sounds bonkers. You know?
And there is an energy to it that is, which, to be honest, is quite often polished right out of electronic music.
Yeah, it's totally a first take thing, you know, and that was that. But I mean, we literally hadn't heard a record with a Roland 303 on it. I mean, it wasn't until we remixed the 12-inch that we put a bit of that in. But it was that early, you know. It was kind of mid '87, and I'm sure some of those records had been out. I mean, and house records had been in the charts. I mean, you know, there had been some top 10 hits, even a number one, but it hadn't really had that kind of lysergic bit to it added, really, and so it was just our take on it, really, and it, you know, it wasn't, you know, Jen definitely kind of later on was kind of sort of saying he invented acid house, and
he was a good speaker,
nonsense.
wasn't he? He could talk.
Yeah, he was a trickster, was the thing. But it's, you know, it was so yeah, it was a bittersweet experience, because, you know, we had this great chats at long hours over the phone for ages, or like going around on the circle line and just talking, and this great experience. But then he completely ripped me off afterwards. So you know, he licensed the album all over the world, and you know, it's, you know, talking tens of thousands of pounds that he just kept for himself, and was doing that right up until his passing. Really, wow. I mean, he did that the year before to a Dave Ball track, and you just think, God, you know, he's just never going to change. But so it's kind of, but in a way, I kind of don't. I sort of, it's, you know, I say it's bittersweet, but it's mainly positive. Yeah. I mean, if I hadn't made that record, I wouldn't have got on the front cover of the NME. Wouldn't have met Dave. Wouldn't have started the Grid. Wouldn't be here now, still making music. It was an absolutely pivotal thing for me. So
in a way, that session and that experience and the resulting sort of attempts to get in the press afterwards, what led you to places like Shoom and to discover acid house properly and the likes of Mr. Fingers? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what it was like, because I often, when I talk to younger people about the dance music explosion, which I'm always talking about, by the way, but I try and impress upon them about how completely at odds it was with everything, and how new and fresh it all sounded. What was it like walking down the steps to Shoom?
Well, I think there was I mean, if comparing it to today, I mean, there's lots of different things. I mean, there was no alcohol, or didn't seem to be much alcohol going on. People drinking Ribena and stuff. It was small. It was only about 150 people. It was in a basement of a fitness centre where they had like kind of these big heavy drapes with kind of fitness bikes behind them and stuff in this tiny room. So you'd had like the bar on the left hand side when you went downstairs, and the main room on the other side. And it was really hot. It was, and there was enormous amounts of dry ice. So at times you probably couldn't see more than like a foot in front of you. So that was quite strange. And also there was no kind of wallflowers. I mean, like everyone in the room was into it. I mean, in the most kind of massed sort of celebratory way I've ever seen. You know, it was just this kind of, you know, it was as if you were winning the FA Cup every week. which you could. I mean, a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, yeah, that's just the drugs and everything." But it's weird looking back on it, and as I was writing about it, that wasn't the thing that I remembered at all. It was more the people and the music and just this sort of celebration and the kind of connections, the communications with people, were much more. People would want to know who you were, what's your name, where you're from, all this sort of stuff. Which 6 months before in the WAG club, that just wouldn't have been the case, because there'd be like people posing in black suits, which were now baggy and very colourful outfits. It was a very different thing, and just there was and also particularly from sort of mid-70s onwards, that period, the 10 years before Acid House, was really violent. I mean, it was kind of you could if you saw someone walking down the street and you were affiliated with a slightly different tribe or a slightly different haircut, the chances are there was going to be a fight, and that just and so to go to this place where the chances are instead you were going to be hugged by a massive skinhead it was extraordinary. It was so different, and also it was tiny, it kind of felt like a good secret, but in a good, not in an elitist way, but in a good way. It was like, it's like kind of with a knowing wink, to sort of, it was, so it was an enormous amount of fun, and it really did kind of take over my life for a number of years in a great way, and reshaped my life, and the people that I met through Sherman, through other clubs over the years, I still know them now, and I know dozens and dozens and dozens of people through that, hundreds probably, but I know probably 2 people from university. So it's kind of, it's a very different thing, but that the lifelong friendships were forged.
Yeah, there was a wave of enthusiasm that keeps going. And I often say, I did a little piece for a documentary coming out soon called Hold Tight Raver, and we were talking about this, and I was saying, like, there is like a well of memory and joy that is so easily tapped into, and like the moment I hear the opening bars of "Can You Feel It" with Mr. Fingers, I can see those faces, I can remember those moments, and like you say, the friendships you make at something like that, because everyone was being so open. Of course they're going to last, because you're not hiding anything. You don't. There's no horrible secrets to uncover, because everyone confesses everything in the first 10 minutes.
Completely. And also, and I think that's that kind of shows the power of music as well. It kind of it's for me it communicates more instantly than language. It just goes straight in. There's no kind of barrier of language and words and grammar and all that. It's just straight into your brain and your body, and I think that it was something like that Mr. Fingers tune. I mean, it's so minimal, it's only a few notes really, and it's just like, but what few notes, what can you do with a few notes? And it just really shows that you can create, part of it, as you say, is memory and the situation and setting and all the rest of it, but partly it was just a genius record really.
And of course that background, that backdrop, that set you in such good stead, because then you started working with Dave Ball as the grid, and it must have been great for him as well, because I know he'd come off an incredible trip with Soft Settle, and kind of fallen from like really dizzy heights, I think from when I've seen interviews with him, he felt a little bit lost for a while, and then felt like the sort of rave and acid house community kind of took him in, and gave him another shot at making the music, and the sort of trajectory that you guys had was insane after that, because I think a lot of people kind of forget, for that age of dance music, especially the stuff you did on Deconstruction. I mean, obviously Flotation was an amazing track, and very, very important at the time, but you were like one of the first big ravey pop stars. You were on Top of the Pops numerous times. The Deconstruction records, I've got tons of them, and the remixes that were done of those records. It was a big thing, and you had some proper bona fide hits, didn't you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think with going back to what you're saying about Dave Ball, I think he did have a kind of slightly kind of period where he wasn't kind of doing some stuff, but I mean, the reason for him getting into it is so it's the right, he was the right guy, because if you listen to Memorabilia by Soft Cell, I mean that is an acid house record, years before its time, and so kind of it sort of fitted in the way that things, Weatherall would be playing, Chris and Cozy records at Sherman. There was that kind of electronic thing going on. So I mean, it wasn't really. I never really thought of it as like me kind of giving him a hand up. It was always the other way round, because he was always.
I don't mean you in particular. I just mean the scene and the way he found another place to be. Because obviously before it was very much major label pop star thing going on. Even though he was on Some Bazaar, the licensing brought all the big pressures of the big record companies with it.
But I think we kind of we just kind of really bonded over I mean, he obviously was massive Northern Soul fan, so I mean he'd had that all-nighter experience that I was having a lot later, and so we kind of really connected on that. We kind of knew the power of that, and but also just we connected on Kraftwerk and Suicide, and just I don't know, just a kind of odd art school approach, certain weird films that we liked, and we kind of had a bond, really. But yeah, as you say, he'd been a massive pop star, so I mean, initially I was like really wary. I was really shy of him, because I was like, well, hold on a minute, you've got someone that's been on Top of the Pops loads of times, and then we kind of repeated the feat a few years later, which is quite rare.
Not many people do. That's what I'm saying. That is a rare thing, and it lasted for a good long time as well. The Grid had a long period of success and are still officially together-ish?
Well, we are. We kind of dip in and out over the years, but we are actually about to sign a new deal on a big label. News. So we've been working on new tracks. We're kind of remixing and remaking a lot of old stuff as well. So it's I've got a whole year of Grid ahead of me at the moment, and then hopefully we'll be playing live either towards the end of this year or next year. So it's kind of ongoing. I mean, it's been it's amazing, really. You think that you can work musically with the same person for, it's getting on for like, I don't know, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. It's quite a long time.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of enjoyment and enthusiasm and a lack of pretension that comes from the pair of you. Do you know what I mean? Like I love. There's a great section in the book when you're talking about the Grid are established, you're on Deconstruction, you've had a few hits, you're doing quite well, and then you get into this sort of rhythm where you kind of go to the pub each evening for a couple of beers and think, what's the maddest thing we could do a collab with? and you just like choose some really left field shit all over the place. I mean, again, and not just once, but again and again and again. It became like almost a game between you to see what weird ingredient you could put in the Grid and still make it work.
I think it's that thing of like, people just having the best pub chat, or like if you're in a tour bus and just talking nonsense, which obviously most bands and artists do. But most people would leave those ideas there, whereas we just went with them. Just said, right, let's ring up the Corby trouser press people because we want to have some use them as part of our drum kit on Top of the Pops, and just purely, which was the reason for that was because Steve-O, when he was signing Mark Arman to
it's from Steve-O from Some Bazaar,
from Some Bazaar label, kind of quite a character in himself, must be said. And he was signing Mark Arman to Warner's with Rob Dickens, and who was a kind of head of Warner's at the time, and he went into a meeting, and Rob Dickens sort of commented that his trousers weren't particularly creased nicely and stuff. So Steve-O then added an extra bit to the contract, which included 6 6-foot Bugs Bunny characters and a Corby trouser press, but it had to be a specific one. It had to be the Excelsior, which was the top of the range.
Corby trouser press,
with where you get your own name engraved onto this thing.
Wow.
So he did that, and we were quite blown away by that. So we thought, and also being in hotels up and down the country, you'd see a Corby trouser press in every single hotel. So we were like, I wonder what we could do. Could we like fry eggs on them, or like what we could do? But yeah, we just got So we thought, right, let's get in touch with Corby and like do something. And most people would have just gone to bed and forgotten about it, but we actually did do that, and they gave us a bunch of very space age looking white Corby trouser presses,
How amazing.
and also a Corby tie press, which looked like a wah wah pedal. They said, "Go on, you can pretend that's a wah wah pedal." So yeah, that's the kind of.
I love that
that's
guy.
you could tell. You could tell the madness was creeping in. I mean, we basically, we spent quite a few months just sort of getting into a blacked out car every morning, going to sort of some interview, talking about ourselves, or making a record in the studio and coming back at 3 a.m. So I mean, and it was ongoing. There wasn't any let up. So I think that was our kind of outlet for the general madness of the situation.
Yeah, we had Wesley Doyle on, who wrote a book about Sun Bazaar recently. And, we were laughing like drains at the various mad things that he managed to wheedle out of record companies and in story.
I mean, if everyone that knows Steve-O has at least one Steve-O story. I have dozens of Steve-O's. Some of them I put in Wes's book, but and some of them are just too many, basically.
I can imagine. But these collabs, I mean, they were far-reaching and they were crazy. I mean, you end up working with Timothy Leary and getting him to record loads of stuff. You managed to get Sun Ra did some stuff for you, and Robert Fripp, who I mean, he's quite an intimidating character anyway, because he's so serious and so incredibly technical. But you managed to sort of just, I don't know, it's like you tickled his funny bone or something and got him into what you were doing.
I think it was just that we kind of realised, as well as being this incredible sort of craftsman and, someone who sort of practices for 5 hours a day or whatever, he also had many other sides. And it certainly was, in terms of, I mean, obviously work with Eno, so I mean, he's going to have a kind of lateral thinking art school or avant-garde approach, as well as being able to play the guitar really fast as well. So you got both things. But we just it was really intimidating, because neither me nor Dave are real virtuosos. So we just that's the one way we went at it. We just said, okay, well, let's give him some ideas. So we were saying, like, can you play as if it sounds like a nuclear war, which he then did, and so he loved, you could see kind of he'd have this gap, he'd sort of think for a bit, and you could see his kind of mind kind of turning over and over, and then you could see a sparkle in his eyes, and you just be like, yes, I can do that. I can make a sound that will make your balls smack. Is what he actually said, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. But,
but you can feel the message though. It conveys.
It just sounds filthy, whatever it is. But, and he made a filthy, amazing nuclear sound. So it was good. So I mean, it was great. And we've worked with him on and off over. We did a record with him quite recently. It was more of a kind of remote thing that him and his manager David sent over, an archivist David sent over a lot of material, and then we worked on top of it, but so we didn't do it together, but yeah, it was great. I mean, for us kind of DIY ex-punkers to suddenly be in a really good recording studio with Robert Fripp was pretty much a bit of a dream, really, and I'm glad we pulled it off, really, because it could have gone the other way.
I mean, the stakes I love the little bit in the book where you said, after getting him to do the nuclear war, which in a way is kind of like what you'd expect, because you hear like his solo on Fashion by Bowie.
I was thinking Fashion as well.
It's the most out there. I think he described it as fully amped. It's the most out there, at an angle, solo and guitar noise you'll ever hear anywhere, and it's funky as you like. So you kind of expect that of him, but I love that the next thing you kind of asked to do was just like, oh, right, so we're going to take all the effects off, and you can only play 4 notes, and then the moment of like, have we gone too far?
And that was quite a long moment, because he did his usual kind of contemplative 2 minutes where he doesn't really say very much, which in Toby Ames's film, the King Crimson film, there's a great bit where he actually he stops talking for quite a long time, and most directors or interviewers would push him at that point, and Toby just stops and waits for him and you see all this thing going on in his head, and I won't spoil it, but it's a real pivotal moment in the film. And but it's great to see. So at this point, the cogs, when we said, right, you can only play 4 notes, and it's only got to be on your Les Paul without no effects at all, and it really it threw him quite a bit, and he just said, right, okay, I'm going to go and walk around the block which he did, and then we thought, is he going to come back? But he did, and he played the 4 notes, and he was so excited. He was like, I've played 4 notes, but they're the right 4 notes.
Yeah,
And he absolutely loved it, and it was great. He was just such a, again, I aspire to be, I've worked with some great guitarists, him and Johnny Marr we work with, and every time you're in the studio with people like that, there's certain things that you get off them that they share, not even just musical things, but just how they are as people, Johnny Marr just came in and he just remembered everyone's name, and he thanked everyone, from the T-boy upwards, and I was just like, yeah, that's what you do, if you're going to have longevity and be a good person, you need grace, and he just really had this graceful edge to it. I was so impressed by that, as much as his amazing playing, So it's just, that's for me, that's the thing, every time I work with someone else, you always get something from it, and it's always takes you somewhere you probably didn't think you were going to go in the first place.
Well, I think that leads us on nicely to your work with Erol Alkan and Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve, which also brilliantly ties up kind of your story so far at that point, because you'd had this sort of punk and psychedelic phase that you did, and then you'd had this dance music phase, and really Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve, by editing those psychedelic records and DJing them together and making these new productions, you really marry together all the aspects of your interests in a way, and certainly that set of remixes and the album that came out, for me, I loved it, because I really love psychedelia, do you know what I mean? And I really love dance music like yourself, and you've married them together so nicely. You can tell there's real love for both of those forms. How did you and Erol actually get together?
Pretty much as you say, that kind of love came from us both really being fans, and being massive music obsessives, really, and I played some tracks to him. We were both appearing on a BBC Radio London show, on Sean Rowley's show. I was doing a kind of A to Z of Psych, which I think we got up to about L, and then didn't do anymore.
At least you got love in there.
We got a few. So I was on the show, and Erol was on afterwards, but he'd come early, so he'd listened to my half of the show, and I was playing just insane kind of records. It was I think it was something like
Mad River,
and Amphetamine Gazelle, which is that's just unhinged. It's just like why?
That is exactly what it is. It's like about describing the kidnapped girl on the side of the road and all that sort of stuff.
Wow. And why are spiders in my mind? And it was just like, what is going on? But in a falsetto voice. It's like, who would have thought that would be a single? It's not really going to bother the upper reaches of the charts, is it? Really? But yeah, so it was just, we played these. I was playing them this stuff. I started making him some like CDs up of weird records, and he loves kind of outside the music of all stripes anyway. So and then we just sort of it just naturally led to us DJing with them out, because we'd never heard them loud, because no one would play them normally, and then thinking, oh yeah, well that bit could be longer, or this could, we could edit this bit out, or we could add a bit more, kind of change the EQ, because a lot of those records are quite tinny and sounding. So yeah, it was kind of road tested in this little bar in Shoreditch for a while, just to sort of get it going, and then it turned into EPs, and then it turned into our own songs and lots of remixes. So it was quite a natural progression, really, and kind of but kind of growing up in public in a way, because we were playing out, just trying things out, adding new things to the set, which is kind of works. A lot of DJs kind of do that, playing their own stuff and road testing it on the dance floor. But for us, it was a slightly more exploratory, because people hadn't really heard that sort of thing. But I think
it's an unusual angle to come at a dance floor anyway. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a great passage in the book where you describe, can we play 20 minutes of Can?
Yeah.
And you can, but you have to have the balls to do it. You got to slap those balls, as Robert Fripp might say.
Obviously people had played Vitamin C out or something like that, or they had played some tracks. No one had played. I'd never heard You Do Right in its full 18 whatever minutes, because it's a phenomenal and record that I love with all my heart, but I haven't heard it on the dance floor. And it felt like, can we do it? Is it after 5 minutes? It's like, can we go any further? But as it got on, it's such a hypnotic kind of stoner kind of groove that it just worked, and it was like great. And these records sound phenomenal loud, I think my favourite kind of the kind of bit where the sort of in the early days of Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve, the real pinnacle for me was when we played at Green Man, and it was like the Far Out tent, and we did this set, and for that we really mixed the kind of electronic beats and the old stuff, and it really felt like acid house. It had a real feel to it that was kind of very similar, and it was like people were coming up saying, "Oh right, we understand what you're doing now. This is this kind of is dance music, and that was great. I'd love to do that again. I mean, we're back at it with the Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve. We've just done.
That's good to hear.
We've done 3 remixes so far this year. We've done a new long mix of Flowered Up's Weekender, which is coming out, and which is like 8.5 minutes. No, 8:08 it is. 8:08 minutes long.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
we had to get the mastering engineer to cut a second off.
I hope you're going to do a 303 single edit.
We should. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, of course. Yeah. But we've done that. We've done one. We've done a couple more, including we've done a new Fat White Family single we've just done, which I think we're back where we were. I think and off into the future. I mean, it's got a very similar element as our Franz Ferdinand mix of Ulysses. It's got that kind of dance floor thing, and which that to me that was the kind of one that really kind of. That and the Mid-Lake remix we did were the kind of crossover ones. But I remember, Andrew Weatherall saying he played the Franz Ferdinand one in every single European capital. So I was like, that was it. That was better than going on top.
You did something right if Weatherall's playing it everywhere.
That's better than going on top of the pops. It's just like you're getting Andrew to say that.
I mean, it's so lovely to have you on, because I absolutely love that project, and I've actually tried to get Erol on the show once or twice, but not quite managed to lure him out the studio.
I'll ring him up.
Yeah, give him a nudge. We'd love to have him. But I just love that whole ethos of the way you were working at the time. And your final choice is Mid-Lake Roscoe and the Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve mix. Was that a really important time for you both in terms of like finishing that record? Because it is, I mean, it's a really wonderful mix. It really is.
I mean, apologies for choosing kind of my own record, even though it's not really my own record.
We've had people come on and choose all 3 of the records, all their own productions.
But at least, I mean, I don't really see it as our record, because it's obviously such a I remember, like, I was living in we just moved to Lewis in near Brighton, and living right under the castle, and I was up in the attic room making that record, and it was really hard to make, because I just kept like turning everything off and just listening to the vocals, because there's incredible kind of choral BVs on it, and
the cadence of the actual lyrics, the way it kind of it's not rapping or anything, but there's a real flow to how the actual words that are chosen. It's not even like they rhyme or anything. There's just there's some sort of natural order that comes out in the way he speaks them.
I think it's like a film script, that one. It's got this thing. It reminds me of that film The Witch or something like that. It's got this sort of old kind of new people coming to the continent and forging their way forward or something like that. But I mean, the lyrics are fairly abstract. So I mean, that's just my interpretation of it. But yeah, I mean, it was just a one. It's got a real kind of goosebump feeling, that track, particularly, and I'm glad everyone really took that on board to the point where ours and the original are pretty much neck and neck for what people like, and it was a real honour to do that one, and I mean, Erol liked it so much so that he called his one of his children's middle name is Roscoe.
That's a definite
dedication.
Nod of approval, that one.
Stone cutters made them from stones chosen specially for you and I. take along, traveling many miles, knowing they get here. When they got here, all exhausted, on the roof leaks, they got started, and now when the rain comes, we can be thankful. When the mountaineers saw that everything fit, they were glad and so they took off. Thought we were too full of change.
Well, I mean, it is wonderful. There's no doubt about that, and I'm really glad you're doing more work together, and as I am with you are with doing the grid, and I'm so glad that you haven't lost any of your enthusiasm for making music. And I think there's a bit towards the end of the book where you opine upon the fact that you can't imagine not being that person, not being the person who lives in music.
I mean, I've just bought a drum kit, for example. And I've had
A new career looms.
Yeah, right. Here we go. I mean, I'm not great. I've got a great. I had over the years had this great teacher, this guy Dave Barbarossa, who was in Adam and the Ants and Bow Wow Wow, and an incredible teacher. And he didn't teach me many lessons, but a really enthusiastic teacher. And it was just like, and I just thought, what, I'm just gonna. I want to kind of work out in some way, but I'm not going to go running. I'll just buy a drum kit, So that's, I think, So there's always a musical element of what I'm up to.
And that's the only thing that would ever get me running, is if I had my iPod or whatever, or strapped on my ears. But you're still doing it, and I love the stuff that you started doing during lockdown, the sort of your Music for Healing project, which is kind of like, I guess, the meditation aids, drone music. But they're about creating an atmosphere and a feel that really helps your mental state. And I think one of the things I sort of feel off the book is that you recognise the power of music to change your mentality, your situation, to be a catalyst to inspire you to get to do something, to to really change your world. And it feels like you've still got that belief that is possible.
Yeah, and I think it's something, as Andrew Erol used to say, music's not for everyone. It's just something that I can tap into that, and thousands of other musicians and artists and listeners do. But it's kind of it is quite specific. But yeah, I mean, certainly with the what's been great about making the ambient music is that it's kind of music that's not only is it kind of aesthetically pleasing and I can look at sonically pleasing and look at the production elements, but it's also got a purpose, and that for me is the reason I'm still doing stuff. It's like I've got something with a purpose, and if one person hears one of those ambient pieces and it helps them, then my job's done, and I've had tons, dozens, endless emails from people saying, this has helped me get through bereavement or anxiety
that's
or
priceless,
depression,
isn't it, really?
And that's it. That's the main thing. So I think that's pretty much why I'm still making music, because to get to that point, that takes making your work into a practice, really, and or making a habit and turning the habit into a practice and making that what you do, and that's why I'm very happy with my relationship with music, because it's given me so much, and then I can now give that back out again, and it's just fantastic hearing people said we've given birth to this music. My favourite one was someone said that it sends their dog to sleep, which is really good. They said they got one piece and they put it on every night, and they say within 30 seconds the dog's asleep, and it's just like, so my best critic, I think. Yeah,
I mean a proper function, that, because some dogs are a bit wild at night. Everyone's got to chill out.
Yeah. Well, that word's quite interesting, because I was for a long time I was pondering. It's like I always liked functional music, but it wasn't the right word. It was like because it sounds a bit kind of.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a wallpaper then, doesn't it?
And but actually, but the word is that it didn't have a function; it had a purpose. And as soon as I got into that and realised that's what it is, that was a real eureka moment, and that's really kind of kept me going for a long time.
Well, I mean, it's fantastic that you are still going, and I'm so glad you're still working on these projects. And I really, really enjoyed the book. I really,
thanks.
You know, I read a lot of these for the podcast and various other things, and yours is much more than a list of dates and sort of, you know, name drops. Although you drop some bloody FD names.
I think, there's more name drops than anything. But I mean, I did, you know, and kind of knew I had the anecdotes and I had the punchlines and all the rest of it. But what I really wanted to do is create an engaging piece of writing. Really, that was
you definitely did, because there's a like I say, I described it as like a snowball that builds up, and you know, there's a period when you're like 2/3 way through the book because bloody hell, is everything is ever going to slow down? You know.
I mean that was on purpose. I mean that's definitely part of the structure. That the very slow beginning where I'm out in a field where we're living on a Girl Guides camp, and I'm out in the field listening for moles. It really slowly. You know that was I was trying to kind of create a very slow beginning, and also because thinking about what you like as a kid, you know, it was like time seemed, you know, immeasurable, you know, and the gates to where we were renting this little cottage at the Girl Guides campsite had these massive gates in the at the entrance, and they looked like, you know, they were like 6 times as high as me, and it just looked like, you know, there's gates to a castle or something, you know. But even though we were just on a little rented cottage by this field, but it was, you know, there was an immensity of it, but also a kind of slowness, and so I mean, during the book, I did purposely kind of make it speed up to when the point gets to the kind of peak 90s that it's just ridiculous. It's just stuff's happening all the time.
So you absolutely captured it perfectly, and it's a brilliant book. It's called Strange Things Are Happening. And it definitely lives up to the title, because many, many strange things happened to you, my friends. And it was a joy to read it, and it's been an absolute joy to talk to you today. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
No worries. We shall no doubt speak again.
I would enjoy that very much. And best of luck with the new grid and wizard sleeve stuff, and the healing music, and anything else you care to throw out into the world.
Well, the new disco project. If you can find us these singers, then the new disco project's underway.
I'll make a few phone calls.
Brilliant.
Lovely to speak to you, Richard.
Thank you.
Cheers, and bye-bye.
They roamed around and foraged. They made their house from cedars. They made their house from stone. Well, they're a little like you, and they're a little like me. We have all we need.
Very much hope you enjoyed listening to this interview and this podcast in general. We don't ask for much from you in exchange for all of this wonderful entertainment, but what you could do for us is tell your friends. Tell your friends about the podcast if you think they'd enjoy it. Send it to them, and if you really, really enjoyed it, and only if you really enjoyed it, please rate and review us. We'd love your positive review. I mean, if you want to give us negative feedback, I guess that's okay too, but really we prefer your positive reviews. So if you have something nice to say, please go and say it in the review section on Apple Podcasts.
No one to stay with when they get back.